Hey, it's Tim from ChiroUp, and today we're going to talk about an elbow exam, finding out what is the diagnosis. The first thing we're interested in is obviously the history, what's the onset, and where's the location of pain, which tells us a lot. Once we have those clues, then we go into the exam. We're going to look at range of motion first of all. What do we get from flexion of the elbow? We should see 140 to 160, which is excellent in this case. What do we get from extension, which should be down to about 0 degrees. We're also looking at pronation of the wrist, which should be 80 or 90 degrees, and then supination of the forearm, which should be 80 or 90 degrees as well. We'll also evaluate wrist flexion and wrist extension, which we should hopefully get to around 70 to 90 degrees with each of those. The next thing that we'll do is passive ranges of motion, because when we stretch the wrist extensors here with wrist flexion, we're going to see if there's any irritation of the lateral epicondyle. And the same thing if we stretch the wrist flexors, we're going to see what's happening to the medial epicondyle. The other thing that gives us a lot of information on range of motion is resisted testing. So if we have the patient extend their wrist against our resistance, we're looking at what's happening to the wrist extensors for lateral epicondylopathy. Same thing for medial epicondylopathy. If we go into resisted wrist flexion, now we're pulling on that medial epicondyle. The other thing that we can do with resisted range of motion is to engage the pronator muscle. So the pronator muscle travels over the median nerve. A lot of times there's compression of that median nerve up higher. It's not just in the carpal tunnel or just in the neck. So if we have that patient try to pronate their hand against resistance, we're going to hold that for maybe 10 or 15 seconds. That's causing some compression of the median nerve and maybe some paresthesia into those first 3.5 digits. Likewise, for the radial tunnel, which is irritation of the radial nerve about 4 finger breadths distal to the lateral epicondyle, that nerve is going to be irritated if we contract the supinator muscle. So in this case, we have her try to supinate against our resistance for a minute. That contraction of that supinator muscle compresses the radial nerve and causes discomfort down into the dorsal hand. Those are the ranges of motion that we're looking for along the way. Now the other thing that we're going to check is general palpation. Where's the tenderness? This gives us huge clues as to where the discomfort could be coming from. The most common source of discomfort in the elbow is going to be right over the lateral epicondyle, right in here. So the patient will report some tenderness at the origin of that extensor carpi radialis brevis muscle. We're going to pay attention, is the peak tenderness in this lateral elbow pain here on the elbow at the bone, or is it again a little bit distal, 4 finger breadths down, we get over the top of that radial nerve and say, is that more tender? If this spot's more tender than this spot, we're looking more to radial tunnel syndrome. Likewise, on the undersurface, we'll palpate the medial epicondyle and determine is there discomfort there. And while we're in that area, one thing that often masquerades as a medial epicondylopathy is some ulnar nerve irritation. That's the funny bone, the ulnar nerve traveling right back here, so we can palpate it and say, is there tenderness? In the same way it would be tender in the carpal tunnel if the median nerve was irritated. And also, what happens when I flex and extend her wrist? Is there any subluxation of that ulnar nerve? Does the ulnar nerve pop back and forth over the bony prominences? If so, we understand how that would be irritated, causing some symptoms down into the hand. We want to palpate the joints as well. We're going to look at the radial head, so we palpate the radial head and then just take the hand through supination and pronation to say, does the radial head move underneath my finger, looking for hypomobility or excessive mobility? And then also what happens to the radial ulnar joint with full flexion and extension? Do we see hypermobility or a lack of motion in those areas? So now we move into the orthopedic assessment, and obviously that will be specific to whatever our differential diagnosis is. But the first thing that we'll look at is a positive Cosen's test. Patient's making a fist, we take their wrist into a little bit of flexion, and now extend against my resistance. Again, we're contracting the extensor muscles. It's going to irritate a lateral epicondylopathy. One clinical pearl here is if it hurts with the wrist extended, let's try it again with the elbow extended. Let's try it again with the elbow just a little flexed. A lot of times patients will have a decrease in discomfort with the elbow flexed. This is a great follow-up tool. So as we're treating the patient, then we can see, is it still painful with the wrist, with the elbow flexed, or is it painful with the elbow extended? It will usually be more painful with the elbow extended, so it's a little bit more sensitive test. We'll also want to differentiate the radial tunnel from that lateral epicondylopathy. As I said, the peak tenderness is a little bit distal here, so we can apply some ischemic compressor over that area and say, does that cause symptoms? In the same way we could do manual carpal compression down here to determine, is there some irritation of the median nerve? The other thing, as we talked about, is if we engage that supinator muscle by having her try to supinate against resistance for a few seconds, that'll create some ischemia as well. And finally, we can do a radial nerve tension test. In the radial nerve tension test, we're going to stretch the brachial plexus up top. we're going to stretch the radial nerve at the shoulder, at the elbow, and at the wrist and move into this position here. So as I'm going back with her hand and arm, I've got her wrist in extension, her elbow in extension, her shoulder and some abduction, and her head laterally flexed. We're putting the radial nerve at a maximum stretch. If she has reproduction of her discomfort in her forearm and in the back of her hand, that could be specific to somebody who has a radial tunnel syndrome. The other area of the elbow that's often irritated, not as commonly as the lateral epicondyle or the radial tunnel, is the medial epicondyle. So we can apply some compression over that area, or we can do the golfer's elbow test, which in this case we're going to take the wrist into passive extension in this area and a little bit of supination as well. So we've got supination, we've got extension. We're basically just putting a pull on that golfer's elbow or on the medial epicondyle. We'll see what happens with simple passive wrist extension. We want to remember that somebody who has irritation to this medial chain, it will be somewhat dependent upon their age. That if we have a real young patient, especially a thrower, we're not looking at so much the tendon, we're looking at more the apophysis getting stretched. So a traction apophysitis, in this case, little league elbow. It's going to hurt in that exact same place on that medial epicondyle. If we have somebody who's just a general adult, they're probably going to have some irritation to the tendon. So the weakest spot in a youth or an adolescent is going to be that growth plate, whereas in an adult, it's going to be the tendon which becomes weaker. Then if somebody's a thrower, throwing places tremendous stress on that elbow. If we put her arm in a vise and had her hand supinated, if I took a 25-pound weight about 10 centimeters above her arm, that's the amount of force that gets put through an elbow with every single pitch that somebody makes. When you do that 100 times, that's going to start stressing the ligaments in this area. So we're looking at the ulnar collateral ligament, palpating that area, saying is there discomfort. There's a couple of other tests that we can do. We can do just a valgus stress test where I'm going to push into her elbow here and say, is there laxity or discomfort when we open that up? But we can do a moving valgus stretch test, which in this case, we're going to take her arm here. I'm pushing outward as I'm fully extending her elbow. And we can see, is there any laxity or discomfort along the way? The last thing that we can do to check for an ulnar collateral ligament or a medial collateral ligament, same thing, is called a milking test. She holds her hand up like she's asking a question, her thumb out, and now resist me pulling your thumb. So in this case, we're putting a little bit of stress, and I'm holding her elbow here. We're putting a little bit of stress on that elbow, and that can reproduce discomfort in our patient who happens to have an ulnar collateral ligament injury. And then lastly, we'll look at the cubital tunnel. That cubital tunnel is going to cause pain or paresthesia more likely in the 1.5 digits on the pinky side of the hand. So again, that could be coming from the irritation to the ulnar nerve here at the elbow itself. In that case, I can palpate that region. We can also do an ulnar nerve stretch test, which is going to be making a circle, putting that up onto the cheek, and then flipping that upside down. So that puts a maximum stretch at the ulnar nerve. If there's reproduction of symptoms into that pinky, that's a positive test for a cubital tunnel syndrome. We could also take our reflex hammer and hit that if we want to do Tunnell's sign, but probably the least sensitive of all the tests. Now, one thing that we do want to think about in the elbow, not necessarily related to symptoms at the elbow, but it's close to the elbow for the origin, is pronator teres syndrome. When somebody has numbness and tingling in their first 3.5 digits, that's oftentimes median nerve irritation, and we think carpal tunnel. Most of the time it is. 77% of the time it is the carpal tunnel, but it means that then 23% of the time it's not. And a lot of times it's this muscle right here, the pronator, which the median nerve travels underneath it. If it's tight, it compresses it and causes that same numbness and tingling. So if somebody has numbness in their palm, the palm is not innervated by the median nerve that goes through the carpal tunnel. There's a branch of the median nerve called the palmar branch that supplies the palm. So if we have somebody who has numbness and tingling here and in the palm, it's not happening just here, let's look upstream. So we palpate the pronator teres muscle as one. Number two, we can have that patient try to pronate their hand against resistance. Again, holding it, the contraction of that muscle will create ischemia and there's discomfort. And then the last thing that we want to think about for our exam of the patient is a functional exam, because a lot of times when they're having symptoms in their elbow, it's because something else is irritated up chain, whether that be in the shoulder or all the way up to the neck. So we think about things like scapular dyskinesis. So scapular dyskinesis evaluation, every time that the patient raises their arm, for every 2 degrees of glenohumeral movement, we'd like to see 1 degree of scapular rock. So we can measure that. We don't need a goniometer, but we just ask them to raise their arm and we track it and say, where's the shoulder blade going? We see that she has pretty good scapulohumeral movement. We're also looking for the possibility of a sixth scapula, which means scapular malposition. It means inferior angle prominence. It means the K is dyskinesis, to where there's irritation or problems as she's raising her arm. The scapula is not rocking the way that it should. And then the C part of that SIC is coracoid tenderness, because that's where the biceps and the pec minor are pulling. So we're always going to look for a sixth scapula. And scapular dyskinesis is often part of a bigger problem, and that would be upper cross syndrome. Our patient who has these forward head, forward shoulder postures, sitting at a desk, tightening the pecs, tightening the upper traps, and stretching everything out. So we evaluate the posture of the patient. And while we're looking in that area, we're also looking at the cervical spine. We remember that a good chunk of discomfort that comes into the elbow is actually arising from an asymptomatic cervical spine. Sometimes it's not an asymptomatic cervical spine, though it's symptomatic. So we look for the possibility of a cervical radiculopathy, and that is loss of range of motion, especially rotation. So she rotates from side to side. Does she get a full range of motion, or is it limited? A lot of times if it's cervical radiculopathy, there'll be less than 60 degrees of rotation. Not all conditions read the book, but that's a general rule. Secondly, we're going to do some foraminal compression, either direct foraminal compression or lateral foraminal compression, and say, does that cause discomfort? Sperling's test. And finally, distraction, tractioning upward on the head, saying, is there relief of symptoms as we do that? If we see that those 4 tests are positive, it's very likely that there's cervical spine involvement. So we're looking for any type of irritation. And certainly the other thing that can help us is a neurologic exam of checking the reflexes throughout the upper extremity, checking sensation with our pinwheel, and then checking muscular strength, which we essentially did with the range of motion testing. Now, the one hidden diagnosis that we'll want to think about that often doesn't show up for anything is called brachioradial pruritus. And much like notalgia paresthetica, where this patient has this burning itch in between their shoulder blades, they have this burning itch somewhere in their arms, most likely over the brachialis muscle. One thing that goes away is light sensation or pinpoint touch. So we can just take our paper clip and see, is it the same from side to side? If somebody says, I have discomfort here, most of the time, it too is coming from the neck, and we have a solution. I hope that this has been helpful for you, that you've been able to pick up a couple of clinical pearls to sharpen your game for elbow exams. You can check out any of these tests in the ChiroUp Clinical Resources tab. And if you have any questions, always reach out. Thanks for watching.